The first thing I remember after the actual injury was being fully conscious but totally paralyzed. I was swimming with a couple of friends after nightfall in a lake up in northern Ontario. I dove off the diving board on the dock, and as I was coming down into the water, one of my friends was coming up out of the water, and we collided. So my head hit his shoulder. I immediately was totally paralyzed, but still fully conscious. And then I felt the water coming into my lungs, and I ended up drowning. It took them about 5 minutes, and then they finally did find me and get me out. The funny thing is I always knew, even all through my young years and through my teens, I always knew that the life I was living wasn't the life I was meant to live. I knew something was going to happen to change it. The accident was a godsend in many ways because it did. It gave me my second chance at my first life. One of the defining moments for me initially was about 2 months after the accident. I started getting movement back in my arm, and one of the worst things for me was an itch. When you have an itch that you can't scratch, it's 10 times worse. When I started getting movement back, my first goal for me was to be able to scratch my own nose. It took quite a while, but eventually I got enough strength to be able to get my hand up to scratch my own nose. So I knew I was going to go far after that. Now, mind you, I had to lay there until the nurses came to get my hand back down, but it was a very defining moment for me. After leaving rehab, I graduated from Seneca with a computer programming and analysis diploma. I graduated with high honors on that, and I thought, I've always enjoyed travel. I wanted to do something for me. There wasn't a lot of travel information for people with disabilities at the time. So I enrolled in the International Institute of Travel, and I did a condensed travel course for myself. When you travel with a disability, it's a whole other story. People, especially 30 years ago, they didn't know how to handle power chairs. They didn't know how to handle people with disabilities. Using the knowledge that I gained, I was able to plan and travel a lot more comfortably. A few years ago, I did a trip to Mexico, and while I was researching the things to do, I noticed that they had the underground river system, and they were mile-long trips where people could basically swim down the underground rivers. And I thought, okay, it's been 27 years since the accident. It's time I conquer my fear of water. The water still has a hold over me. Even 30 years later, I still have nightmares. Waking up, holding my breath after reliving drowning again. I ended up renting a floating chair so that could be an option. When I got there, there was no way the floating chair was going to work. So basically, I said, okay, throw a life jacket on me and throw me in the water. We're going. And initially, it was a little unnerving, but after a few minutes of just floating there and starting the journey down the river, the anxiety and everything started to dissipate, and I was actually starting able to enjoy the scenery and enjoy the water, and it made such a profound difference for me. For the last 3 years, I've actually been deteriorating and losing functionality, strength, and mobility. In May of 2018, I had further spinal surgery to stabilize my spinal column, and as a result of that, I had another rehab stay. So I was very, very nervous about going back into an institutional setting after living independently for 30 years. And the staff actually made it very, very comfortable. They were very inviting, very warm, and they were interested to know my routines, what I needed. They were listening to me, and they were trying to fit my routines into their workday to keep my routine as normal as possible. It really, really helped because, again, it wasn't as much of an institutional setting as it was just a caregiving setting, and that meant a lot. The other thing that really helped was actually there was a young lad in the room with me whose accident was remarkably similar to my own, and so we had many good conversations of it. But it also, by being able to share with him and show him that there was life after disability, and for him to be able to take that in and use that as inspiration, gave me back inspiration to be able to want to share more with others. Now, because of what I've lost over the last few years, I've had to leave work, and I'm looking at this as an opportunity now to start the next stage of my life, where I'm going to go with it. It takes strength and courage to live with a disability, but it takes experience and a wicked sense of humor to thrive with one. And I've been thriving for 30 years, and I've got many years to go.